Okay, so the next one is to do with metabolism and thyroid. So eating, this is kind of what really is. Eating fruit tells your body you're in a calorie-rich environment, so your metabolism accelerates, which means that you can burn. I'm not 100% sure what the point is there, but then he also argues that if we're not eating fruit and we're regularly burning the fat that's stored in our bodies, that's stressful. And then by eating fruit, it puts our body in a less stressful situation. So I feel like you've got something to say here.
Yeah, is it really stressful? Is it? I don't know. I think that's going, harking back to the idea that this is a fed state and a fasting state, and a fasting state is putting your body in stress, and this is hard on your body, and this is only supposed to be if you're lost in the desert and you can't eat for a month, and this is a survival mechanism. That's nonsense. This is the primary metabolic state of all animals in the wild. Your fat stores are your gas tank. This is how your body runs. You fill up your gas tank, you run on your gas. All animals in the wild run like that. Animals in the wild, except like hummingbirds and some insects and things like that, they run on fat. And so, they're not running on carbohydrates. Even herbivores, they break down, fiber into, short chain fatty acids, right? So they're all running on this. They're all being able to access their fat stores. They're all running on fat. And so they're all in this stress, horrible state that's boxing their thyroid. Probably not. And then the idea that you're in a high caloric state, you've got an abundance of food and so forth, so you put your body is less stressed. What has more energy and nutrition and calories than fat? Not a single food source. So, carbohydrates, have 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9. Okay. So, I've heard this before, people saying that, we must have eaten a lot of honey and so forth because it's such a calorie dense substance. And it's like, density is a specific word. Density, means calories per gram. The densest, caloric source is fat. Carbohydrates are the same caloric density as protein if you can, by burning it, which is nonsense. I mean, things are, function very differently in your body biochemically. So, those calories don't actually work exactly the same as like the calories from protein or the calories from fat and so forth metabolically. However, if we're just going off those numbers, it's definitionally not, it's calorically dense. Fat absolutely has the most energy per gram. As far as thyroid is concerned, again, look at the Inuits, look at people in the ice ages and so forth. If you had some sort of deficit that caused hypothyroidism, that's a big problem, especially for survival in the wild. Hypothyroidism is a dreadful state to be in. It's very, very harmful. It's very hard to live with. And if you don't have enough, you can die from this. More importantly, when a woman is low thyroid and she's pregnant, that baby becomes severely deformed and misdeveloped. It's something called cretinism. We call people cretins, but that actually is a medical term for this specific developmental delay of congenital hypothyroidism. All the best insults are all old medical terminologies, and cretin is one of them. And so this is a very serious issue. You become very intellectually delayed and impaired and physically impaired as well. And so if you had to have carbohydrates, if you had to have fructose specifically, and you're in an ice age, yeah, well, exactly. Everyone would have been cretins, and they would have just died out. We would not have made it through tens of thousands of years of ice ages. The Inuits would not exist right now because there are no damn fruit and there is no honey. So I don't think that holds water. And I don't think that if you just sort of look at that from that perspective, and this is something that Dr. Saladino says, he likes to look at these things from an evolutionary perspective and so forth. He looks at the Hadza people.
Looks at the Hadza a lot.
Yeah, which is great, but he talks about how they eat honey when and where they can. Fine, but it's the males doing that because the males are out hunting. There have been studies looking at this, and the women generally don't eat a lot of honey. They're generally more health and better health than the men. they generally have better dentition and better dental health than the men as well. So
I tell
does
you,
this
just on the Hadza, when I see Paul Saladino, talk about the Hadza, and he went and visited them, which would have been an amazing experience.
That'd be cool as hell, yeah.
Yeah. But like sort of just next door or near the Hadza, you have the Maasai people. And the Maasai people, as far as I can tell, are possibly one of the most dominant and incredible physically and culturally of all the African groups. And they're tall and lean, and they don't eat any carbohydrates. They just eat blood and milk from their cows.
And meat, and obviously, and meat, obviously. And and so that's the thing, is cherry picking, isn't it? You're looking at the example that
you find the honey tribe.
But within that tribe, there are people that eat more or less honey, and they have differences in health just within that tribe. And then you look at the Maasai, and they're very different as well. They're much more healthy than the Hadza.
That's what I'm trying to say.
On top of that, there's one thing that and again, I preface by saying I really like and respect Dr. Saladino, and Carnivore Realist is funny as hell. I really do like his stuff, and they both have a lot of really good resources that I encourage people to look at. But I just disagree with them on this point, and that's fine. People can disagree and have discussions about it. Dr. Saladino was talking about different studies that he didn't like, looking at getting your calories from fructose versus glucose, and there were problems. But he wanted a study when he was talking about a debate he had with Dr. Gundry, saying that, okay, well, show me a study showing that fruit is a problem or honey is a problem. Okay, well, just because no one's done that study doesn't mean that doesn't exist. You're trying to prove a negative here, and so he called it, reductionist thinking, that you're just saying, well, because there's fructose here, and because, in isolation, fructose can cause problems, does that mean that honey is a problem? Does that mean that fruit is a problem? And he's saying, no, that's bullshit, that's reductionist thinking. Okay, well, that may be, but, then why are we talking about lectins? Why are we talking about tannins? Why are we talking about oxalates? Why are we talking about cyanide? Why do we talk about, solanine and all these sorts of different plants? These things exist in plants, and that's what, all of the carnivore proponents, including Saladino and so forth, rail against. They talk about these things. I've always talked about these things. But that's reductionist, though, isn't it? According to that line of thinking, well, this has oxalates, so that's bad. Well, has there been a study to show that spinach does cause a problem, and the oxalates in the context of the spinach cause a problem? So, maybe that's reductionist, but we are being reductionist in other ways then as well. And I don't think that it's a problem to do that. If there's a harmful substance in a foodstuff, and that harmful substance is getting to your body and causing harm, that's causing harm. I guess his argument would be, maybe in the context of fruit in itself, in the whole food, is less of a problem than just refined sugar, which is true. We know that, we get, fiber and so forth. You get the fiber in the plant. This actually stops the absorption of everything. This is why fiber is really bad for you. It stops the absorption of different nutrients and so forth, including the fructose. So then it goes into your lower gut, and, and you don't absorb all of it. Fine. Honey's not doing that. You're going to get honey, you're going to get the fructose from honey, and honey has more fructose than high fructose corn syrup. There's going to be other things in there that are beneficial. This is the lifeblood of the bees, right? This is what they eat. And, so it's going to have things in there that is good for animal life, but it's also going to have fructose. And fructose, while maybe it's good for a bee, is not good for us and can cause serious harm. And Dr. Saladino talked about those sorts of studies, or animal model studies, or hypercaloric studies, where maybe this group is eliminating fructose, but they're also reducing calories. I'm sure those studies exist. However, Dr. Lustig has been doing exemplary work and research for well over a decade on this, and he has done human models, human trials with isocaloric studies, meaning that all they did is swap out the fructose. Calories stayed the same, weight stayed the same. He did not let these kids lose weight. He did not let them eat less calories. And they were eating junk food. They were eating kid food. They were eating, toasty bagels and this, that, and the other, but they were just not eating donuts. You know what I mean? They were not eating fruit. They were still eating junk food. They just were eliminating the fructose. And he was reversing metabolic syndrome. He was reversing fatty liver disease in these kids in like 8 days. Okay. In every single one of these things. And so this actually, this study, met the criteria for causation in these studies. So, now maybe, Dr. Saladino would say, well, they didn't, have those kids eating fruit and honey. They maybe were eating junk food that contain that, maybe. But, I think that you're getting, I think you're getting a bit particular when you're saying, no, I want this study to be done exactly like this. Well, if you want that study to be done exactly like this, please go and do it. You're a doctor, you've got, I'm sure you can get a grant proposal, I'm sure you can get a grant together and do that. If you really think this is healthy or whatever, do the study. There's a lot of information out there that suggests and shows and even shows causation that fructose is harmful. And we have biochemical evidence, we have biochemistry department at UCSF show that fructose metabolizes into the same metabolites as ethanol, and it causes the same damage to your body from those metabolites as ethanol. Okay, so it doesn't do the same things in your body before they're metabolized, but as soon as they're metabolized, they do the exact same things as ethanol does. Okay, gram for gram. Okay, so this is going to cause the same problems as ethanol. Going to cause fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, diabetes, heart disease, even implicated in cancer and Alzheimer's and so forth. So I don't see how you can just say, well, the fructose here doesn't count and is just not going to cause a problem. Okay, well then do a study and prove it, because all the studies right now biochemically show, first of all, you don't need a randomized control trial when you're to show a biochemical process. That's not how we study that. We're going down and actually seeing how this molecule acts in vivo, and this is what it gets broken down to, and this is the pathways they go through. That's hard science. So it'd be nice if we had all these studies. We don't. If he wants to say that fructose is actually really good for you, if you're eating fruit or if you're eating honey, go ahead and do it. I would say that the fruit thing, if you're eating fiber and so forth with it, you're going to ingest or absorb less fructose. But once that fructose is in your body, I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that that's not going to act as fructose in your body. And, he asked for these studies. Okay, where is his study to say that once that fructose is absorbed into your body from honey or fruit, it's not going to act the same way as table sugar? I haven't seen him produce anything like that.
That's the question. Either. And it's like, is a small amount of this fructose when eaten, with whole fruits, so you're getting the fiber as well, is that giving people a net benefit? And I suppose, Saladino and Carnivore Aurelius would argue yes. But as you're suggesting, it'd be good to see a study. And
they could do that. They could say, if they did say, okay, you replace, you're having kids eat the exact same thing, but the fructose they're getting is from, fruit or honey source, as opposed to, some refined sugar, and you try to sort of balance out the other nutrients so there aren't confounding factors. You could do that. And if he wanted to do that, I'm sure he could, but, he's postulating at this point that, there's, that is going to be safe in that context. And he wants other people to prove him wrong. It's like, well, no, the burden of proof hangs on you at the moment, because all the studies right now actually suggest that fructose is bad for you. And so if you think that in that certain context, they're good for you, well, then, you need to back that up. You're just saying that the absence of those studies, proves its existence. That does not hold water. So, you're not going to live generationally if you're deficient in any single metric. And so, that doesn't really make sense to me from an evolutionary standpoint or just a survival standpoint. We have people that are alive today that live generationally just eating meat. There are no biochemical processes that require fructose. None. Not a single thing in your body requires fructose. There's no such thing as a fructose deficiency. But, Carnivore Aurelius would suggest that there is. That, if you don't have fructose is going to balance out your minerals and so forth. And without this, you're going to have a deficiency and you're going to have a problem. but you don't, and this isn't what happens. So, carnivore Aurelius, I think one of the articles I read from him, he was saying that this affects your thyroid health, damages your thyroid, like we mentioned, and that you need to eat fructose in order to do that. Again, there's no such thing as a fructose deficiency. So adding in fructose isn't going to do anything for you from a deficiency standpoint.